Hello, thank you for joining us again for another broadcast of Let the People Decide. I'm Porter Davis. I'm going to be your host today. We're going to be interviewing my friend Ken Warner in a few minutes. He's running for a House district here in Oklahoma County. He's also the vice chair of the Oklahoma County Republican Party. So we're going to hear some interesting things from him. Then after that, I think Moto is going to come join me a little bit, and we're going to talk about some of the interesting things that have been posted on the OTU website this week. So please stick around. We'll be right back.
Hello, basket of deplorables, ladies, gentlemen, those who are undecided. Todd Tucker back at the bunker where I belong. And we want you to join us here at OTU Media. Become a patron, a Patreon member. If you want true conservative messaging and not the same old corporate filtered news of Oklahoma, this is the place to be. Become a supporter, a soldier, a sergeant, a co-producer, even a sponsor. True conservatism lives here at OTU Media. Go to patreon.com/OTU Media, patreon.com/OTU Media. This is where conservatism lives, and the fight is just beginning.
Hey, thanks for sticking with us. This is Porter Davis again, hosting Let the Taxpayers Decide. I'm here with Ken Warner today, who is the vice chair of the Oklahoma County Republican Party. He's also running for House District 96, the seat that will be vacated soon after the current Representative Lewis Moore terms out. So we're going to find out about that, and then we're going to talk about some other issues that are happening. But first, Ken, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, be glad to. Retired businessman, worked for SBC / now AT&T for 30 years, and in executive positions for the most part. Obviously worked my way up. So that's my background is telecommunications, business, and of course I did things with contracts and lots of other things. So I do have a pretty good skill set in terms of how to handle all that. I'm a veteran, constitutional conservative, so those things are obviously important to me. I also believe in traditional family values. I believe in the right to life, very strong about that. I'm really for limited government, lower taxes. I believe in integrity in government. I believe in hard work in government. I also really want to work on improving education in Oklahoma, definitely more spending in the classroom, and I really want some really must-needed changes to criminal justice reform. There's just a lot of things that we need to fix in that arena also. So those are just some of the ideas that kind of trouble me right now, and then things that I want to work on when I'm elected. Of course, right now for me, one of the things that's probably more important than that is when I start knocking doors and talking to people within HD 96 will be I want to know what they're concerned about, because my concerns need to be their concerns, whether it's Edmond, Arcadia, Luther, Hera, Choctaw, whatever, any of those cities that are in my district. I definitely want to fill the needs of what those people want. So that's where I'm coming from. And then from the vice chair position, it's just continuing to improve the Oklahoma County Party. We've got to do a better job of recruiting people, of getting Republicans out to vote. That's going to be a big, the Go TV, get out the vote piece of it will be important, as well as all the things you're doing with grassroots. So those things are very near and dear to my heart as a Republican. So.
Well, that's near and dear to my heart. How long have you been doing political things, Ken?
Well, I've done it off and on a little bit for most of my life, but not seriously as I got into it. Back in 2015, my wife and I, Maggie, got really involved in the Trump campaign. We started here with a gentleman named Ben Keel, and we started making phone calls in Oklahoma, as well as I think Georgia and New Mexico, and gosh, I don't remember who all now. And so, but obviously Oklahoma being a red state, they transferred Ben up to Colorado, and I answered the phone one cold winter day, and lo and behold, it was Ben Keel, and he basically asked me if Maggie and I would come to Colorado, and so we had a short chat, and about 4 days later, we jumped in the car and off we went to Greeley, Colorado. So we campaigned for Trump about the last 5 weeks of that cycle in Colorado. That was really fun.
So what were you doing up there?
Maggie, she did a lot of the recruiting, got people to come into the office to help out, doing all sorts of things, primarily phone calls. I did the phone training because obviously with a telecommunications background, that was easy for me to do because I know a lot about it. And so she got them in the office, and I trained them. We had everybody that you can imagine in there. It's that part of Colorado is reasonably conservative. Probably not the university area right there, but the rest of it is. So I even had 10-year-olds coming in making phone calls. So it got me excited. Then when it was over, and of course we all know the results. President Trump won, and then we came back. And then once we got back to Oklahoma, there just wasn't any reason that we could find that we weren't going to really get involved. And then because of what we did, we were issued invitations to the inauguration, and we got to go to the balls and all the things that come with being able to do that. So that really probably fired me up a little bit more. And then as we kept getting more involved, Pam Pollard then was the chair of the party, and so we helped Pam on varying different things, victory parties here after the election and so forth. And then as we begin to work on, and because I'd been to the inauguration, because I'd been so involved with the Republican Party, I knew then that I really wanted to, at some point, to make a run at going to the convention, to be a delegate to the convention. That got me excited. And then I realized there was going to be, that our Pam was leaving, obviously, so there was going to be a new state chair. And then the gentleman that was the county chair at the time was going to run for state chair. So Evelyn McCoy, who's now our county chair, was going to run for that unopposed. And so I decided I'd throw my feet in the fire and run for vice chair. So I did that, and fortunately was elected. So it just kept going. As I got more involved, and I realized that my house district, I'm an eastern Oklahoma County resident, so I live in East Edmond. So as I knew Lewis was going to be, Lewis Moore was going to be turning out, and Lewis and I have talked many times, and so my wife and I prayed about it, and we made the decision that I would run for House District 96. So I'm vice chair and running for House District 96.
Wow, that's quite an introduction, but I can certainly relate to it. Now, so you're running for the state house. What do you think needs to be done to improve things out there?
Well,
or for the state,
Right.
It might be better to talk about some of the issues you're passionate about and that you want to work on when you go out there.
Well, one thing, as I talked about early on, was the fact that we have to improve education in Oklahoma. I just keep seeing things and hearing things. These short weeks, 4 days in the classroom. Number one, that's not good for students. First and foremost. Number two, it's not good for business, because if you're going to attract business in our state, your education has to be of good quality. And right now we're not there. And I know what Governor Stitt has said. We want to be a top 10 state, and I think there are ways we can get there. It's just going to take some time. There's a new Senate bill out there. I believe it's 441 that Brenda Stanley is backing, and it's going to. I believe if I heard her right, you have to spend a minimum of 165 days in the classroom, which I think is great. And I think we also need to expand what's going on in the classroom. There's things we're teaching now that, quite frankly, don't need to be taught to young children. I think it needs to be more civics. I think we need to get back to the basics, which reading, writing, and arithmetic. Those things are really important, and right now they're sometimes not even being featured. I talked to Senator Stanley the other day in a meeting, and she discussed the fact that, when she was mentoring some college seniors that were coming out to begin their student teaching, she had them write a paper. And they wrote the paper, and they submitted these papers to her, and their grammar was so bad that she made them rewrite them. And it's kind of scary to think that you've got college seniors that can't write some sort of a paper to Brenda, although Senator Stanley is a 30-year educator, so I'm sure she knows exactly what she's talking about and what she's doing. And so that just doesn't sit well with me, the fact that you're 21, 22 years old, graduating from college with a degree, and you're going to go out and supposedly become an educator, and you can't even write a correct grammar paper. That's kind of scary to me.
That's nuts for a senior.
Yes.
Well, it's as nuts as having remedial math in colleges.
Right.
Why would you go to college and take remedial math or remedial English? That makes no sense that you'd even been going to college if you needed those things. But what kinds of things do you think that we should do to improve Oklahoma education? Should we give the teachers a big pay increase? Will that fix it?
I don't think it's pay, because when you look at the amount of people right now, and I don't have all the statistics on this, and I apologize for that, but it appears that there are less and less college graduates in Oklahoma that are graduating to become teachers. That number is my understanding is drastically going down. Well, that's kind of scary, because I think we just recertified, I believe, 1,600 people, that don't have teaching degrees to teach. And I'm not trying to say that these people that are getting these certifications can't teach, because they're smart people. But what they don't know is like how to manage a classroom and how to do curriculum. All those kinds of things are things I don't believe they know how to do or aren't taught to do. I mean, I certainly was never taught that. I can certainly teach, because I've done it. I did it at Southwestern Bell, SBC, AT&T, so I can certainly handle that piece. But those are some of the things that they just have to get fixed.
It's not inconceivable that you could go to a VOTEC school or someplace if you had training in whatever skills needed to be taught, and take 2 or 3 classes on just those things you're talking about and get that hammered out in the equivalent of 1 semester. I mean, why do you need to have an education degree to teach history? I mean, if you need to learn techniques for teaching, learn the psychology and so forth, you don't need an extra 2 or 3 years of education to get that. I've had 8 years of college. Okay, so I know how that game's played. I got 2 degrees, did graduate work, and my advice to people that are considering college today is, number one, to figure out if you need a college degree for what you want to do. And if you do, then go get it the quickest, cheapest way to get what you need, so you can, as quickly as you can, get where you can mentor with somebody that can teach you what you really want to do. I mean, these methods that we have for educating, frankly, are based on the kinds of technology we had 200 and 300 and 400 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, today we can learn we can learn without having to spend so much time sitting in what's basically a minimum security institution. But that's another story. We're going to take a break right now and be right back.
Hey everybody, Todd Tucker here. Are you tired of Big Mobile making deals with dirty DC politicians to amplify liberals and silence conservatives like you? Do you want the same quality of service that you get from your current provider without supporting leftist, anti-American subversives like Kendra Horn and Nancy Pelosi? Well, Patriot Mobile can help you, and they can make a great deal. Ask what Patriot Mobile can do for you, and ask what Patriot Mobile can do for your country. Call Patriot Mobile today at 877-367-7524. 877-367-7524. Be a patriot. Join Patriot Mobile.
We're back again. This is Porter Davis with Ken Warner. Ken is running for House District 96 in Oklahoma County, in northeastern Oklahoma County, including about 4 or 5 towns: Hera, Choctaw,
East Edmond, Arcadia, Luther, Hera, and Choctaw.
Wow.
Mains. Yeah.
That's quite a number of interests to represent. We were just talking about education. I just wanted to ask Ken, before we move on to another topic about what kinds of structural reforms do you think might help education?
Well, one is it would be great if we can get smaller classrooms. That's one of the things. And I mean, there are places around, Bethany schools, in the Bethany School District itself, they have smaller classrooms, and teachers are well paid there, just like most everywhere else now. But smaller classrooms would help. But I also think, it's got to be a parental choice. It's got to be market driven. You ought to be able to send your children to school where you think they'll get the most benefit. If that's charter, if it's private, if it's something like Epic or any of those, I think that's fine. And I think, they're trying to improve Oklahoma City public schools, Edmond public schools. Doesn't make any difference which they are. And then, of course, you always get into the discussion with a lot of people, is about whether they should consolidate or not consolidate. And there's probably way too many moving parts on that right now to probably even get into a heavy discussion about. But someday that's got to be relooked at, but I don't know if now's the time.
Yeah, well, that's good. Educational choice, from everything I've studied for over 30 years, educational choice is the foundational element we have to add to improving education in Oklahoma. You mentioned another subject that's near to me, criminal justice reform. That has a number of aspects. How did you get interested in criminal justice reform, and what are some of the top issues within that topic that concern you?
Well, I have a number of friends who are currently working within criminal justice, one, and two, who are trying to help get reforms, and they're trying to help people coming out of prison, out of addiction, those kinds of things. And so there's a lot of work going on there. And so I've had some pretty healthy discussions with those. And there's some places, some churches that I have attended where they're doing a lot of great work, who have homes for people coming out of prison, both men and women, to get them into a home, get them back into structure, and how to take interviews and get them set back up to re-enter the workplace, re-enter life in general. So I'm really interested in that. One of the things that I'm dead set on trying to fix is that, there are certain abuse laws, there are certain things out there where people get arrested and they go to jail and they wind up losing their jobs, they get heavy fines, and now that person comes out of prison, their family's now broken up, they have no jobs, and they've got to find a way, because those fines don't go away, and they've got to find a way to pay those fines. And some of those, for one example, I know of a guy who was jailed in Oklahoma City, in jail there, and his fines were, I don't know, $400 a week or some number like that, who gets out and goes on. Of course, he's trying to find a job, pay those fines. In the meantime, he gets arrested, I believe, in Ponca City, and gets thrown in that system up there, and the fines up there are like $4,000. So now you just got this guy who's now been incarcerated twice, who has a heavy amount of fines to pay, that has no way to pay him at all. So my point to all that long-winded discussion there was that we need to find ways, when somebody gets picked up for these offenses that quite frankly, do not need to be jailed. It's fine if they break the law. It's not fine if they break the law, but if they break the law, and they're, especially you see families that get broken up. The daddy goes to jail, mama goes to jail, kids are left in the foster system or other places. For me, it would be better to take these people, put them in an after work hours training program, and show them their mistakes. You're not retraining them on how to be a criminal. You're showing them how to stay in life and to stay good in life. And whether that's getting them back into church, it doesn't matter what that is, but you just put them back on the right track so they can become productive adults again. And that's what we need to do. Leaving somebody locked up in jail, and we see it all the time, where they found another one the other day, somebody that got lost in the system that should have been in jail for a couple of weeks, and I don't know exactly how long the gentleman was in jail, but quite a while. And those things need to get eliminated. We need to put them back to work and make them productive, not throw them in jail.
It's a whole different thing than the idea that, well, if they broke the law, just throw them in jail. I know a lot of people say that kind of thing, but until you've actually talked with people and been back behind bars and you've seen what their situations are and their backgrounds and their families, and you've seen what our penal system does to these people, they get their hope destroyed. Most of them have already grown up in dysfunctional family backgrounds.
Correct.
That's something I've become painfully aware of in recent years, about how much dysfunction there is out there. And then you throw in all these punitive kinds of laws and sentences and a system that has to have people to feed off of. I mean, the private prison system has to have people in prison to pay for itself. I mean, the state has obligated itself to private prisons to supply them a certain number of prisoners. I mean, that's nuts. I mean, that's a kind of slavery. It's not much different than a feedlot or a chicken processing factory where they're taking the eggs from the hens and then the last thing they do is string them up and cut their neck and send them down the assembly line to be plucked and cut up. I mean, I mean, it may sound like an exaggeration, but we had Chris Steele in the studio back in May talking about criminal justice reform, and this is something that my views have. Well, actually, I was concerned about it. I was working on trying to get some uniform sentencing going back when I was serving in the legislature in 1983 and 84, not to date myself too much, because I saw the arbitrariness of so much of this. And the first thing that happened to me when I got elected is Armin Start, who was the medical director for the corrections system, had me meet him at 6 a.m. one day over at DOC on Eastern. We visited 4 prisons that day. That was my first introduction to state government after I got elected, and it left a lasting impression on me. So I'm glad you're working on that. What are some of the other aspects of that concern you?
Well, I think number one, most of our prisons, are in some differing state of disrepair, obviously, because they're old, and at some point we have to find a way to take care of that. But I think the big thing is, my point is that, the people that are dangerous, the people that have murdered and rapists and so forth, excuse me, are the ones that need to be locked up. There are dangerous people out there that need to be locked up. Because primarily, as we all know, I think that one of the biggest functions of prisons right now is really their mental health facilities. I mean, where we used to have places in Norman and Veneta and I don't know all the towns that had mental facilities in Oklahoma, but when those were open, our prisons weren't nearly as full, as much as I can tell. And so really as much right now, if anything, we have really serious mental health issues that are causing a lot of people to be locked up. And as we've seen with all the craziness that has gone on across America, with those kind of things, it's obvious there is a mental health issue in the United States of America right now. So we've got to address all those. And I realize that's a mouthful and it's an awful lot to try to do, even for a state legislature, Senate and House. Those are serious issues, and I know that the last legislative session it was on everybody's minds out there what they had to do, and so that's why that's important. We've got to fix criminal justice reform.
And politics can't fix it all. Politics can only do certain things. I mean, the dysfunction we're facing right now is just part of the larger issue, as I see, of societal collapse, cultural collapse. A scripture I've thought a whole lot about lately is in Proverbs 11:3-4, I believe it is. If the foundations are destroyed, what shall the righteous do? And we look at our country, and the foundations have been destroyed. This country was founded clearly on a basic Christian classical liberal worldview and legal system. We had strong social infrastructure when we were founded. I mean, you had to have the social infrastructure. People landed and had to survive, so families had to stick together and be strong. As you got a cluster of families, you had neighborhoods that had to be strong. And as you got bigger, you had town meetings where you had people talk about government and representative government and what are the issues around them. We don't have that kind of social infrastructure today. And so we're basically trying to rebuild on a collapsing foundation. Right. With that, we will be back in just a minute or two.
Introducing all new, safe, natural relief. A cannabinoid-rich, clarity and focus formula with 17 essential supplements. When it matters most, you've got a job to do. Anxiety isn't an option. Programmed to keep you moving. A product exclusively manufactured for Active Duty RX by Cantech Labs.
We're back with Let the People Decide. I'm Porter Davis, and I have with me Ken Warner, who is running for House District 96, which will have an election less than a year from now.
Okay.
He's the vice chair of the Oklahoma County Republican Party. At the break, we were talking about the level of education that so many people have, and he posed an interesting question to me, and I'd like you to pose it to our audience right now.
One of the things that we talked about, and what I asked Porter, was that, to become a citizen of the United States, you have to pass a citizenship test. And you can find them online, but I have taken them. My point is that if you picked 50 random people anywhere, but let's just say in Oklahoma City, and had them take the test, I would suggest to you that a lot of people would not be able to pass it because they haven't taught civics, they haven't taught the U.S. Constitution, they haven't taught those things in basic history also in the classroom, the best I can tell, in quite some time, and which is aggravating to me. We teach socialism, in high school and college levels. I know college for sure, probably some in high school, and rather than teaching U.S. civics, and socialism is not a way. And I also, how many people don't really understand that this is a constitutional republic? This is not necessarily a democracy. It's not. The Constitution doesn't even mention the word democracy, just to give you an example. So it is a constitutional republic, and it needs to stay that way. So that's my pitch for there.
Well, I would agree with you. I think it's part of the whole propaganda war that we face. I mean, it's easy to find liberals, progressive Democrats that really push the idea called democracy, and they don't talk about the republic because that is the foundation of our country. It's a division of powers. It's a way to hold the government in check. If you have a true democracy in its purest sense, that means 50% plus one can decide to kill the other 49% less one if they want to. That's basically, or 50% less one. That's my public school math coming out there.
It's old math, not new math.
And so, I mean, a lot of thought went into the founding of our republic that we have, the constitutional republic, and it is true that the schools aren't teaching that. I graduated from the public schools over 50 years ago in Oklahoma, and I didn't have that great a background then, I found out later, and I've just heard it's gotten a whole lot worse. We had a meme today that was posted on the Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite website that you can't see right here, but maybe they will show that. But it shows the headline is "The Ideology That Killed Over 100 Million Last Century," and it shows a picture of Mao Zedong, the hammer and sickle, a bunch of skulls, looks like Laos, and it says that the ideology, i.e. socialism/communism, that is killed over 100 million, it's more like 200 million in the last century. It's now being praised at our universities today with all the people pushing socialism. And as could certainly be expected, a lively debate came up because there are a number of younger people that now have this idea that we can have a political unicorn called democratic socialism. In some never land, all the comrades get around together and they democratically decide how they're going to divide up everybody's assets and see who gets to do the work. But they want to deny that it has anything to do with what we've seen in real live, actual dictatorial socialism, where people lose their rights and get disarmed and the government takes dictatorial control. So that's part of what we're facing right now. It's just a basic battle that's it's still political, but it's outside of electoral politics. It's in the politics for the mind and how they get people to think about things. Have you started knocking on doors yet, Ken?
I have begun in a small way right now. It's still obviously, the general election is not until November of 2020, and then we get the primary season to go through before that. And of course, this is a presidential year, and a lot of House districts are up. There's just a lot of people up for re-election or up for election. So it's going to. I don't want to.
It's hot right now,
yeah,
too.
well, that's part of it too. But
people aren't too interested about next year.
well,
yet.
I don't know how you are, but I know. I block every call I can humanly block it on my home phone. I still have one, to try to stop some of it. But it does get pretty annoying, and I know that, and so I don't want to be annoying. But yeah, there's some times we're going to get out there and door knock in some special areas, and we're going to attend some parades and some festivals and do all those kind of things. I'm certainly not an unknown quantity out there. People do know who I am. I did sit on the Oklahoma All Sports Board for 34 years, so I've promoted lots of events and done lots of things, and I was active in civic organizations and all those kind of things. So I'm not a total unknown, but you win elections by knocking on doors. You don't win them by sitting at home thinking that life's going to go by and you're going to win just because you got an R or a D by your name, and that doesn't work that way. So we want to be active because I'm concerned about what the people want. I mean, I certainly have my own concerns, as I stated earlier. You heard those, but I'm really concerned because I want to hear from the people, and I want to be as active as I can be, and I want to conduct some town halls, and I want to be able to do all those things to stay in touch with the people in East Oklahoma County. So,
but you plan on basing your decision making on responding to the problems and concerns that people have,
right,
and then using your political principles to apply to come up with solutions to the problems we're facing. Is
correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's just, to me, that's common sense. I mean, and one thing I remind my friends is we, obviously we all know that money's the mother's milk of politics. So as we all try to fundraise, because, some people say, well, I'm not in your district, and I say, I understand that. But, when you go into the House of Representatives, you're certainly representing your district first, but you're also representing, the state of Oklahoma, because one of the things we want to do is improve Oklahoma. We want to make Oklahoma a better place. Look, I've lived here for a long, long time. I love this place and have forever, and I can't imagine really living anywhere else. I mean, so as a patriot and as a veteran, that certainly makes a difference. But I'm also almost as patriotic about Oklahoma as I am about the United States. And it's just we live in a wonderful place, and the things that I've grown up with and things that I've lived through here, the bombings and things we've had that have impacted all of us as Oklahomans, has made me very proud to have been a part of it, not the bad part of it, but the good part of when we were reconstructing things and bringing people back and just building our hopes back up and becoming a good state again. And that's, we don't need another one of those cycles with bad tornadoes or any of those things, but they do happen. But we want to keep this place safe, and we want this is a great place to live. The cost of living is not high. People are nice. People are kind. This is a wonderful, wonderful state to live in. We got to promote it.
I agree with you. Anybody that doesn't appreciate all the good things about Oklahoma needs to go see the rest of the country. That's what I could say. I've been around a number of different places, and I'm always glad to get back here. And that's what we're working for. Part of what we're doing right now with the County Republican Party is responding to a little bit of complacency we had, and basically what we have seen with we did not take our brand as seriously as we should have. I think we got complacent about things and maybe got a little bit lax, and it got to the place in some places where people thought maybe it doesn't make any difference whether I elect a Democrat or Republican because they seem to act the same. But I'm going to vote for that person that knocked on my door and seemed so nice and talked like they were so concerned about what they were going to do. But my goodness, when they got in, I'm looking at some of the legislation they voted for, and they're not as conservative as I thought they were.
I agree. I mean, it's important that you know where we as representatives stand. I mean, if I'm elected, I want you to know exactly where I stand, what I stand for, and what I'm about. And I want you to vote for me because of those values, not just because I'm Ken Warner, nice guy, or any of that. I have values and I have things that I am passionate about, which I've talked some about today, and I'll talk about it more in the future. But because, like I said, this state matters to me. People matter to me. My grandkids matter to me. My children matter to me. I mean, I'm big on all lives matter. This state can be so much better than it is. It's crazy.
Well, and what you're saying is really important. I have found as I've become more seasoned and I have more skin in the game with grandkids that I'm passionate about the future of this state as a way to help improve their lives and make the country better too. We'll be right back.
Introducing all new, safe, natural relief. A cannabinoid-rich, clarity and focus formula with 17 essential supplements. When it matters most, you've got a job to do. Anxiety isn't an option. Programmed to keep you moving. A product exclusively manufactured for Active Duty RX by Cantech Labs.
Drives a truck. Visit cdluniversity.org. At CDL University, and another success, another one drives a truck. Hey, gonna help you too. Another one drives a truck.
Welcome back. I'm Porter Davis with this week's edition of Let the People Decide. I'm here with Ken Warner, who's the Vice Chair of the Oklahoma County Republican Party. He's running for the State House, and we've talked about a number of different issues. I wanted to ask Ken right now to tell us a little bit about what you've observed with Governor Stitt and the relationship he has with the Oklahoma State Legislature and his reform agenda.
Well, I was lucky enough to be part of the early campaign cycle when Governor Stitt was running. I was a volunteer campaign manager for our former state auditor, Gary Jones, when Gary was running for governor against Governor Stitt. So I got to be around Governor Stitt quite a lot, and Donnell Harder and that whole organization, which I have to tell you is an outstanding organization. There's really outstanding people that he has brought in. The people around the governor are just exemplary. I mean, they're wonderful people. Lieutenant Governor Pennell, same way. I think their relationship is really a good one. It's obvious. And of course, Matt, Lieutenant Governor, I'm sorry, I know some of these people personally, so I have to excuse myself. But Lieutenant Governor Pennell is doing great things for the state, as is Governor Stitt. I think Governor Stitt's relationship with the legislature, which you initially asked, is really good. I know I've talked to a number of senators, I've talked to a number of sitting House members, and they all seem to really get along with Governor Stitt, and that includes people on really both sides of the aisle. It's not just whether you have an R or D by your name. I think the governor's doing a really, really good job of trying to definitely push the bipartisan thing hard. So it's just not, there's a left aisle and a right aisle, and I think that's good that he's doing that.
That's good. It's I've been the most encouraged about what's happening in Oklahoma government in easily a decade or more with Governor Stitt coming into office. This year certainly felt different. I think the moves he's made to help streamline government and actually put more accountability into the agencies. And I was told when I was in the legislature, I was told this by the Governor Nye. He was explaining something to me, I forget the context, but he said basically Oklahoma had been set up with a weak governor system. It was set up to As a populist document, the state constitution is the largest constitution of any country in the world or any state in the world, and certainly needs to be redone. It's way overdue. It's constitutionally required convention to look at it, and we need to really streamline that. But he's done a lot to help overcome some of the roadblocks that have been put in there, because basically government had been set up in Oklahoma as a number of independent fiefdoms that had very little accountability to the chief executive officer. So that's why it's been so difficult to get the kind of reforms we need. Speaking of government, I didn't get a chance to look too deeply into it, but I saw a story on Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite today about a former Obama advisor who has been elected by the Cherokee Nation, been appointed rather by the president of I think that would be the title, the Cherokee Nation, to be the Cherokee congressman or congressperson to the United States Congress. And I had not even known there was such a thing. But evidently they can't vote and serve on any committees, but taxpayers are paying for a representative to be there to basically be a lobbyist. And I hadn't heard about that, but the significant point there is that she is a former Obama advisor. Ken, have you had a chance to look into that at all?
I have not. I mean, I know it just came out just actually an hour and a half ago or so. So no, I have not. I've seen it. That it's out there, but I have not had a chance to research any of it. So and that'll be interesting to see, because I don't even know what all the rules and regulations and laws are pertaining to that whole situation. So without some research, no, I can't answer that question. Which brings me to the other point. I think when we look into 2020 and 2021, and as these elections come up in the state anyway, there's going to be some important things. I think, there's going to be some oil and gas issues, obviously, and again, fracking will come to play. I also think, this Indian gaming thing is going to come to play, and that's going to be hard to figure out, because there's only a handful of individuals, probably from 15 years ago when they did these initial compacts, that really know what the compacts really say, and I think that's going to be important, because I like the fact that the governor is now going to issue a commission to work with the tribes, which I think is important. And we want to make it fair for everybody. I know I've heard a lot of numbers and a lot of percentages, and it's 20% and 40%. I don't believe any of that. I think there is a figure out there that's probably the correct number, whether that's 4% or 6%. If they get back to the states, I think that's fine. But we need to be fair. The tribes definitely are putting a lot of income back into the state of Oklahoma for schools and roads and construction, and obviously I don't remember the exact number, but it's a tremendous amount of jobs have gone to a lot of people in Oklahoma, because we have 15 or 20 casinos now, how many ever it is, and we have the largest casino in the world that sits on the Oklahoma-Texas border, and another one down that's going in Durant that's going to be just as large, I believe, at some point in time. So gaming is really very important to this state, and from not just from a revenue source, but from an employment source for a lot of things. And it improves the state, improves tourism, all those things drive business, and so we're happy to have those. So we need to, if the number's not fair, that's fine, but we need to talk about it, and we need to talk about it in an intelligent way. It needs to be researched, and it needs to be discussed openly, so the whole public knows what's going on in that particular area.
Well, and the flip side of that is, you've got all the economic benefits, but you've also got a growing number of people that are frankly addicted to gambling.
True.
And that brings up more of the dysfunction we were talking about earlier with the criminal justice system, because, we've had elected officials who have, you see at least 2 or 3 stories a year of an elected official or somebody who's the secretary or the treasurer or the bookkeeper of a company, or any kinds of things where they have ended up embezzling money to help pay gambling debts. So even though on one hand you've got all the economic blessings of all the jobs and the tourism, you've got also the addiction problem that needs to be dealt with, and somehow society's got to deal with that kind of wreckage. I heard, speaking of the tribes, I heard the other day that there's this interesting case. It's the Patrick what is it, the Patrick Murphy murder case that's 10 or 15 years old is, I think, getting ready to get heard at the Supreme Court or getting a rehearing. And this is a case where a person, Patrick Murphy, was convicted of murder in Oklahoma and is appealing that that the state of Oklahoma did not have jurisdiction, but the tribe where, and I think it was maybe the Osages, but one of the tribes wherever the crime took place actually had jurisdiction. And as I was hearing that explained the other day, I mean, it could be a very sticky ruling if they actually rule in favor of the tribes having their own jurisdiction and their own legal system, because then you could be driving through the state of Oklahoma and have totally different rules applying to you 3 or 4 different places driving on the Turner Turnpike even,
with reservations.
or out on I-40 or wherever. You see these signs where you're leaving one reservation and moving into another one. So when you get elected, we may have some very interesting times for you to deal with, but what an exciting time. And I appreciate Ken. I mentioned it very briefly earlier, but it's tough for you to talk about it, but you've done enough in your life with your business career, and you didn't mention, but I know you've got investment properties and rent homes and things you've done, and I know you're active in prison ministries, and your wife Maggie is, and all of the various things you're in. I think an important thing to be thinking about for you that are looking at him as a possible vote for representative is that he brings a lot of wisdom. It comes through experience and through really a right relationship with God. I've gotten to know Ken and Maggie over the last 3 or 4 months, and I'm quite impressed with them as individuals. So I would sure be voting for you if I lived in your area. I know that.
Move over. So no, I understand. I appreciate those kind remarks. So thank you very much.
But I do appreciate you coming. Do you have anything you'd like to say before we close out here?
No, I just to the people of House District 96, which again is East Edmond, Eastern Oklahoma County, which includes Arcadia, Luther, Jones, Hera, Choctaw, and those areas. And so I look forward to getting out among the people and letting them know who I am and finding out what their concerns are. It's exciting times, exciting processes, and it gives me something. When I wake up every day, I'm excited. I'm ready to go to work.
Well, that's really good. I'm going to put in a plug right now for what I'm doing with you, the project in Oklahoma County. We are gearing up in Oklahoma County to rebuild grassroots infrastructure in the precincts, and we're kicking that off right now, and the whole goal is to do a campaign this fall to find the people who are activists and want to get concerned in the project to transform our state to a much more free state, and to, by doing that, help transform our nation too. We hope to have monthly precinct meetings starting next year and really do a lot to stimulate better citizenship and citizen involvement, and we'll be talking about that more in the future. But until then, for Ken Warner and myself, Porter Davis, and Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, we wish you a good rest of your day.